Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So we finished the Swami's talk last week, and we're starting a new one, the path of action, or as we know it in Sanskrit, Karma Yoga. So that's what we're taking up now. Before I go ahead, are there any questions or comments from anyone? Okay, the path of action. I never tire of defining the true spirit of religion, that it is an experience of God, that it is realizing God within one's heart and soul, that one can see God more intimately, more clearly than this objective universe. Of course, nobody can see God with these eyes or hear the voice of God with these ears. But when divine sight opens, you see God everywhere. You may say, I already see God everywhere, in the flowers, in the beautiful face of a girl, everywhere in nature. But I say to you, no, you are romanticizing. I'm going to repeat that, please. You may say, I already see God everywhere, in the flowers, in the beautiful face of a girl, everywhere in nature. But I say to you, no, you are romanticizing. The flower is not God. The flower blossoms and then dies and then dries up. The flower blossoms and then dries up. Nature nature shifting, moving, changing is not God. What is beautiful today becomes ugly tomorrow. And there comes a time when the whole world becomes dissolved. Where is your God then? Swami Vivekananda made it very clear by saying, all is not, God is. In other words, all of nature is not, God is. You have to realize this first. You have to experience it. And then you realize that God is all. Make no mistake, if you want to find the truth of God, do not romanticize. We have three states of consciousness: waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. In none of these states you ever find God. While you are awake, you are still asleep. This is the paradox. We're asleep in the sense that Vivekananda said we are infinite dreamers, dreaming finite dreams. So we have three states of consciousness or awareness: waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. In none of these states you ever find God. While you are awake, you are still asleep. You have to be awakened, as Buddha pointed out, from this prolonged dream of the waking state. But of course, we cannot jump out of our bodies. While in the waking state, we have to struggle. even though the attainment of God is not something that we have, that is not something that we do not have now and have to achieve. It is already there. According to the teachings of Vedanta. Now, when it says it's already there, well, then why don't we see it? Why don't we know it? It's because it's covered up. It's covered up by our primordial ignorance, Maya. So it is there, but we are not aware of it because of the ignorance that is covering it. The ignorance comes in many forms, all of the things that we believe and say about ourselves and about the world. These are upadis, the coverings. And so we have this phenomena. According to the teachings of Vedanta, particularly the Vedanta that Vivekananda brought to the West, according to the teachings of Vedanta, there are 4 methods of union: the path of action, the path of devotion, the path of meditation, and the path of knowledge. But they are not to be regarded as independent of one another. You find that all religions of the world emphasize one aspect or another, but in the teachings of Vedanta, especially in the Bhagavad Gita and Sri Ramakrishna, it is recommended that the paths be followed simultaneously. And if you take instruction from a Ramakrishna order Swami, Diksha, initiation, this is what you find. They recommend that you follow. And that's what Vivekananda meant when he said, each soul is potentially divine. The goal of human life is to manifest this divinity. Do this by work or worship, or psychic control, or philosophy, one or more, or all of these, and be free. So this is the recommendation. From the Gita and Sri Ramakrishna, it is recommended that the paths be followed simultaneously, without performing actions, without attending to the duties of your life. You cannot achieve purity of heart, which is the one condition necessary to realize God. Now, we've been over and over what purity of heart means. The Swami will give us more enlightenment about that now. Without doing your actions, without attending to the duties of your life, you cannot achieve purity of heart, which is the one condition necessary to realize God. Purity of heart is very difficult to define, but its effect is that the whole heart and mind are pinpointed on God. There are no distractions in your mind, no upadis. The upadis have been set aside, allowed to become dormant. So there are no distractions in your mind, and your heart longs for God and God alone. Now, we often think, is this really possible? Can we really do this? Yes, we can. It's not a day's work or a week's work or a year's work. But if you persist over many years of steady effort, it will happen. Action or work is absolutely important to gain purity of heart. Shankara, who advocated and emphasized the path of knowledge, said, purity is impossible without actions or movement. So even Adi Shankaracharya, who was the foremost modern proponent of what we think of as Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, he said purity is impossible without actions or movement. Religion is not for the lazy, First, you have to be active. As it is said in the Gita, activity is better than inertia. If you are lazy, you cannot even sustain your own body. That's what Krishna says in the Gita. And of course, this is what Vivekananda meant by first bread. First bread, then football, then the Gita. First, be able to sustain yourself. Be free from the constant nagging of want, economic want. Then football. Football is a metaphor for gaining mastery of the game of life, so that you're not feeling always behind the 8 ball, and that life is mastering you. That no, you are the master of the ways of life, master or mistress of the ways of life, and so you're not troubled constantly by life rolling over you or feeling like a doormat before life. So if you're lazy, you cannot even sustain your own body. Again, we read in the Gita, let him who would climb in meditation to the heights of the highest union with Brahman take for his path the yoga of action. Then when he nears the height of oneness, his acts will fall from him, his path will be tranquil, and it'll be spontaneous. It isn't something that you then have to say, well, I'm going to do this now. No, it happens. The 4 yogas may be regarded as disciplines suited to the different stages of a spiritual aspirant's development. The path of action is especially important for the beginner. Now, the Swami will let us know what he means by beginner, but it doesn't mean, the first week or the first month. Of course, it has to be selfless action. This is why it takes a long time to learn. Of course, it has to be selfless action, helping others, doing good, without any thought of name or fame or reward, either in heaven or on earth. My goodness. With selfless action, simultaneously you must have a regular routine of prayer, worship, and contemplation. It is not possible to do selfless and motiveless action without them. Why? Because you have to know what you're offering your actions to. You have to have some sense of reverence. With selfless action, simultaneously you must have a regular routine of prayer, worship, and contemplation. These 3 things together will develop in you a sense of reverence, what it is that the divine being is for you. And it will be unique for you. It won't be the same for everyone. Each person, each of us is unique, therefore the divine being appears to us differently. So it is not possible to do selfless and motiveless action without prayer, worship, and contemplation, so that you have some sense of what you're doing these things for and why it should be motiveless. Because the divine presence, you become convinced of the truth of the scriptures, that the divine presence will take care of you. There would always be the idea of reward behind the action, unless you have this sense of reverence. So for some time, you must perform the daily duties of worship, study of scriptures, and chanting of his name, just like routine work. Then you will begin to love to do them, and you will find that you cannot act without worshiping God, without meditating. Again, this is something that spontaneously arises because, as is pointed out again and again in the scriptures, and pointed out again and again by Vivekananda, this knowledge, this way of being, is already within. It only has to be uncovered. Love comes into your heart, and as it does, your heart naturally goes toward God. Thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. Not my mind's beloved. That comes much later. Thou art my heart. This is Chaitanya's prayer. Thou art my heart's beloved, thou and thou alone. You discover this in your heart. And then the mind, all of these vrittis in your mind stuff, all of these whirlpools of distraction in your mind stuff, they're subdued slowly and slowly over a long period of time, and until finally the mind also becomes calm, like a shy child, and reverential. But the heart, once you discover your heart naturally goes toward God. It is the seat of God. Meditation and contemplation become natural. When they become deeper, the worshiper and the object of worship become united. The lover and the beloved become one. That means that knowledge, jnana, comes to you. In other words, you don't have to strive to be a jnani. Practicing the path of action and devotion will reveal jnana within you. Action, devotion, meditation, and knowledge become one united whole. That is the ideal for each one of us. Everyone in this world works. Now, to understand what's meant, you need to read chapters 2 and 3 of the Gita. Everything that we're doing is work as defined by Sri Krishna. Everything. Blinking your eyes, having a thought, all of it. Being busy, one often says, when have I time? When have I the time to meditate? So we have to learn the secret of action by which the karma that binds us is given blows by the karma we are performing. That's how it's subdued. Now, this may sound violent, giving blows. Actually, I spoke about this with Swami Sridharananda once. And he said, oh no, much better to think of it, dear, as wearing a soft white cotton glove. And your performance of these actions, this worship, this chanting of the name, your mantra and so on, is like slowly and slowly wiping the dust from a beautiful, and he even said, Belgian mirror. Beautiful. Apparently the Belgians make beautiful mirrors and frame them beautifully. So he said, well, from wiping the dust and dirt from a beautiful Belgian mirror, slowly and slowly, the image in the mirror and the beauty of the frame is revealed. The beauty of the frame, of course, is nature, the universe we experience. So he didn't like this term blows. He didn't, that's a kind of a Vivekananda word, a little bit of kshatriya, kayashta kind of caste word. But you can think of it as more gentle than that. Nevertheless, the idea is that the karma that binds us is subdued by the karma we're performing. Karma, of course, means both physical and mental activity. Each action we do, each thought we think, is not lost, but lies within, either in the conscious, the subconscious, or the unconscious, or as I like to call it because it's accessible to this way, the latent subconscious. We become first aware of our waking awareness, waking consciousness, then of our active subconscious, then of our latent subconscious, which is the root. That is where the causes, the true causes of all the effects that occur in the active subconscious and the consciousness lie. Each action creates an impression in the mind, and the sum total of these impressions makes up what we know as the character of the individual. So this is who you are at any moment in time, the sum total of everything that has happened to you. The bad, the good, the ugly, the indifferent. But it stretches back, if we're to believe the scriptures, it stretches back until the time that that which is became in any way manifest as individuation, ahamkara, I maker. So it's very old and it's very rich. That's why it can be so troublesome to subdue. We ourselves have formed our character, not only in this life, but in past lives. That's what I was alluding to. Many, many, many past lives in many, many different forms. Accordingly, there are tendencies to repeat the same actions, to think the same thoughts. Why? The gunas brush against them. The action of the gunas brushes against these mental impressions and reawakens them. And you think, oh, this is my reality. These thoughts, these actions, this is how I am and what I am. Or this is how and what I am. For the moment. For the moment. We are caught on a wheel of birth, death, and rebirth, and there is no way out of it. You cannot pay back all of your karmas because you create new karmas as you go on. Shall we then give up all action? No, that is not possible. You cannot live and breathe for a moment without doing something. So we must learn the secret that will give a blow to the law of karma. Now, folks, because of my forgetfulness and the fact that I got started on this late, I have to tell you, I need to go use the restroom. There's simply no way out of it. I just simply misplaced this meeting this morning in my mind, and so did not get on my regular schedule. There's all kinds of reasons for that, but it doesn't matter a whit. You may talk among yourselves if you're so sweet. That would be a good idea to talk about what you've heard among yourselves. I'll be back as soon as I can.
Now what do we do?
I was just about to say, Cyndi, start the conversation.
Well, okay. I was making some notes earlier in the reading about, and this, I don't think this was in the reading, but it was interjected by Brother Shankara about Swamiji saying about first bread, then football, then the Gita. That the bread is about, just sustaining yourself. So that, and that means more than, of course, just food, but means, setting your life up, if possible, so that material and monetary concerns are not weighing on you constantly, because that's very, very difficult to be in poverty and to be wondering where your next meal is coming from. But I did make a note. This is just my thought. And, you know, I did not get married. I didn't have kids. So I didn't have to make a lot of money. But when I was in undergrad college, near the end of that and getting ready to graduate, one of my advisors, one of his best pieces of advice was keep your life simple. And this was back in 1982, because he knew that I wanted to live a different sort of a life. I wanted to, write and do music and possibly at that time teach, which I didn't end up doing. But keep your life simple so that you can give your mind and body and heart over to what you truly want to do. And at that time, it was not spiritual for me. I mean, it was, but I wasn't seeing it that way. It was more about pursuing, music and the other things I pursued. But as time went on, and especially when I started coming to the center in 1996, when the Vedanta Center was in Decatur, in a house in Decatur, in my neighborhood, over when I lived in Decatur too. And started meditating, and I'm really it's just to say that I can't speak to people who have other people dependent on them, of course, because that's a whole different thing. But even with that, I feel like so many in our culture, we go overboard with the sustenance part, and some people can manage that really well. Most of us can't. That's why decluttering is such a big trend. um, so I just wanted to throw that out about the bread. Anyway, I'll be quiet because I've been jabbering. If anybody has any thoughts about that or other thoughts about anything else.
You know, when you said, keep your life simple, I was just listening to Swami Prabhavananda. He was talking about 0, 0. He is giving an example of one of the Swami in India. He's a very, a lot of people respect him and all those things. So what they do is he sits under a tree, and there are some followers of him. Every day when he sits there from morning to evening, a lot of people bring a lot of things and give it as an offering to the Swami. But by evening, he distributes everything. So that is, he starts with 0, ends with 0. So that is what he calls 0, 0. But of course, we are not Swamis, so we cannot go with 0, 0, but maybe we should go with 1, 1 or something like that.
I like that a lot. Do you know who the Swami is that Swami Prabhavananda is talking about?
Yeah, he said he's still alive. I don't know, but he didn't tell where and what. But this is the main point I got it from is 0, 0. That keeps in my mind. That's
well, keeping your life simple is very easy to say. But I have found that when you wake up in the morning, you may have plans. But something can occur that changes every plan that you ever had. And sometimes we are able or strong enough to deal with life as it's being unfolded to us. And then sometimes we allow the mind to take over and give us reasons why we should go in a different way. But I have found that the universe presents to you the true direction that you should go. And if you follow what's being revealed to you as it's being revealed to you, my experience of that at the end of the road, or maybe not the end of the road, but further down the road, you start to understand why this thing was revealed to you. At the moment, it may seem like, why do this? But if we remember that we are not the doer, and this thing that's being revealed to us, we are. I look at it like we are like God's hands when He wants or needs something done. We're the ones that, with the physicalness, to do these little physical things. And if we look at it in that light, we will always select the right direction, the right thing, the right way.
It sounds like some of what you're saying is it's about learning to listen to that still small voice.
Yes.
There's been a lot of talk, and I find it fascinating, about free will. You know, do we have any free will at all? And there are some physicists who say, no, we don't, and here's why. And I tend to believe we don't have a whole lot of free will. We think we do. But every decision or every choice we make, even a really well thought out one, it's not made in a vacuum. It's made at a time, in a place, by a person, you, with all these other circumstances involved that are unique. And they contribute to the decision you make, whether it's to do the beneficial thing or the non-beneficial thing. But I still personally think, and this is relating to what you said, Bob, about, you know, following, seeing, you know, that way to go, to follow what God wants. And the free will I think we do have is to learn to listen to that. That is the choice we have. And the more we listen to, you know, whether, you know, God, divine presence, whatever you call it, higher power, listen to that, then life is going to be a little more tolerable, I think.
But I do believe that we do have free will, because if we didn't, we would not be able to learn. You see, I believe that God gave us this free will so we could make mistakes. And in making these mistakes, we see the mistake afterwards. Now we can make the correction. So that's the free will. When the free will does not, I was going to say, affect the majority of people in the world, you know, I think we do have it. And that's our learning process. That's our tool, that more so than we realize. You know, those mistakes that we make, man, those mistakes really put correction in our course.
Robert,
Yes.
you know, I'm with you, you know, but the only thing is, even though we think we have the free will, but as what, you know, see, we have to give a Godward turn to everything. Even that free will is given by somebody else. So as long as we say, okay, this is what the think that's what God is telling me. This is what it is. So even though this, the thought might have come to me, but that thought is shined by the self. So that is the Godward turn we have to keep in mind all the time.
Yeah.
This is Vijay. I feel the only free will I have is as to how much I invite God into my life. That is the only free will I have. When I make mistakes, the recognition of my mistakes is also being given to me by God as a gift for me to recognize the right from the wrong and the mistake I have made. Thank you.
I think we're all pretty much in agreement. We're just saying it in slightly
Yeah.
different ways.
Yes.
Brother Shankara has come back. Hi, Brother Shankara.
I have, and for those who know me, that was a record.
Really, it was. I was like, what are you doing?
Ah, me.
Okay, anyway, we just kind of went off on an interesting.
Well, it was wonderful to listen to you, and thank you all for doing that, studying the art of spirituality together. And I notice everyone was very careful not to generate any misunderstandings, careful of one another's words and thoughts and feelings. And it was wonderful to listen to. And thank you all for that. So I'll go back just a little bit here. You cannot live and breathe for a moment without doing something. Notice the Swami says even breathe. Breathe, blink your eyes, doesn't matter. You cannot live and breathe for a moment without doing something. So we must learn the secret that will give a blow to the law of karma. To quote the Gita, the world is imprisoned in its own activity, except when actions are performed as worship of God. The world is imprisoned in its own activity, except when actions are performed as worship of God. Therefore, you must perform every action sacramentally. Now, what does that mean, sacramentally? If we think of the Catholic Church, the sacraments are those things that are a gift from Lord Jesus Christ to purify. You take them through your mouth, a wafer, a little wine or grape juice, and that, along with your penances, you're saying your Our Fathers and Hail Marys, and going to confession, these are the sacramental acts, they purify you. That's what's meant by doing action, every action sacramentally. Do it in such a way that you purify the action and yourself. When you get up in the morning, you offer the day. You offer the whole day. You say, I'm going to do this whole day as if it is a worship of God. Then when you bathe, you offer the bathing. When you eat, you offer the food before you take it. You just begin to, every action. Therefore, you must perform every action sacramentally and be free from all attachment to results. If you do, in fact, these actions sacramentally, if you offer them to the divine and say, I'm doing this as a form of worship, then you are indeed free from any thought of the results. It comes slowly, but nevertheless, it comes. So the Swami said, this is the first point we have to understand. We have to give up attachment to the results of our actions and offer the results of our actions to God. So if we offer the actions to God, then we're simultaneously offering the results to God, because God then takes responsibility for it. Now, this is a mysterious way of thinking, but you do get used to it if you do it. You do get used to this idea. And it has to do with that business of free will that you were discussing, and who's in charge here, and giving, as Balakrishna pointed out, giving everything a Godward turn. In other words, instead of self-centered action, let us have God-centered action. It is said in the Gita, whatever your action, food or worship, whatever the gift that you give to another, whether you vow to the, whatever the gift that you give to another, whatever you vow to the work of the Spirit, O son of Kunti, lay these also as offerings before me. Thus you will free yourself from both the good and the evil effects of your actions. So I'm going to repeat that, because that Krishna is giving us specific instruction here about what karma yoga means, the path of action. Whatever your action, food or worship, whatever, so your action, your food, the worship that you do, whatever the gift that you give to another, whatever you vow to the work of the Spirit, O son of Kunti, son of woman, that's what this means. We are all sons and daughters of woman. Whatever you vow to the work of the Spirit, O child of manifestation, lay these also as offerings before me. Thus you will free yourself from both the good and evil effects of your actions. Offer up everything to me. If your heart is united with me, you will be set free from karma. You will be set free from karma even and in this life. You will be set free from karma even in this life and come to me at the last. Now, that doesn't mean that Krishna's sitting in a chair somewhere, and at the end of your life, you will go and sit in his lap. It means that the being that you are, this jiva, which has become jivan mukta, free by this method that has just been described, this free being, jiva, merges with the whole, with the one. That's what it means to come to me at the last. Any question about what, question or comment about what Krishna has just told us. I mean, the Swami has read us several quotes from the Gita that specifically tell us what to do and how to do it and how to think about it. Are there any comments or questions that you have to offer about what has been said?
Yes, I have something to say about that.
Yes, Robert.
I struggled for many years with the concept of not being able to receive the fruits myself. I struggle with being able to give the fruits of my actions to God. And after many years of struggle, I came to recognize that God is me. And the Atman. And I had seen that, read many places that the physical universe is an illusion. It doesn't exist, which didn't make any sense to me.
Didn't make any sense to Sri Ramakrishna either.
But after dealing with it for a while, if you want to receive the gifts of your struggles and you're giving them those gifts to the physical self, you're throwing them away.
Yes, exactly. Throwing them down that whirlpool.
Yes, the physical self doesn't exist. You're giving them to yourself. And it's like the statement that you just made about looking for the rewards in heaven, sitting on the lap of God. You'll be sitting on your own lap. You are He.
Yes.
So if looked at from that point of view, it all makes sense.
Yes. Thank you, Robert. Exactly. Looked at from that point of view, it all makes sense. But you started this particular part of the conversation by saying it took a long time for you to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Because you've been a sincere aspirant for many years. Our mind, our left mind, wants to insist for good reasons even. One can sympathize with and love the left mind. It's just trying to make everything all right. But it can't. It can't.
Yeah, because I even went through the process of pretending or trying to convince myself that I'm giving these rewards to God. But it doesn't work to pretend. You have to really know it and believe it for it to work.
You're absolutely right. You can't romanticize it. You can't pretend it's true. You can take a stand for it. You can say, I believe in this, and so I'm going to do what Krishna said, even though I don't yet fully realize it.
Right.
I don't fully know it.
And I think you have to go through that to get to the other side of it.
You absolutely do, Robert. You're absolutely right. Anybody else have anything to contribute? This is wonderful. That's exactly right,
Robert. Brother Shankara, this is
yes,
Swayam.
Yes, Swayam.
I just wanted to read this poem from Love Poems from God. I was browsing and this came to me this morning.
Good.
It is Kabir's poem. The title is Where the Shopkeeper Would Say. Where the shopkeeper would say, I was looking for that shop where the shopkeeper would say, there is nothing of value in here. I found it and did not leave. The richness of not wanting wrote these poems.
The richness of not wanting. Yes, Kabir. And, you know, each of these great saints that's in that book, they all have such a wonderful sense of humor. They all so want to make us smile, to laugh. You know, looking for a shop where the shopkeeper would say, "There's nothing for sale of any worth in here. There's nothing in here." What kind of shop is that? Yes, exactly. And he found it. Not wanting anything.
I love that poem. I love it.
I do too.
I like to play with people, checkout people in stores when they always say, "Did you find everything you need?" And I say, "Everything in the universe." Kind of look at me like, or everything and more.
Or everything and more.
Every once in a while I get one that cracks a smile and I know, aha.
Good.
And I love the last line. The richness of not wanting wrote these poems. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, it's only when you get to that point where you've given it all its true value and no longer want anything in this shop of the world. You may need your food, your dwelling, your clothes, of course. But there's nothing that you want. What a state to be devoutly desired. Thank you, Kabir. Thank you, Swayam, for finding and reading us that.
I have a comment about this that I'd been thinking about actually before the class. And this is not at all to compare religions as, you know, this is the good way, this is the better way, that, you know, it's just different. For those of us, especially who were raised Christian, the way of, in Vedanta and Hinduism, it's about offering, like let's just take food or a meal, offering it to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
And in Christianity, it is about gratitude. It's about saying to God, "Thank you for giving this to me for my needs."
For what we are about to receive, make us truly thankful.
Yes, and gratitude is an amazing thing. It's very much a part of my staying sane. And ultimately, I think they are about the same thing. They're about remembering God. But I have to say, I really like the offering because the offering of food and then everything else throughout the day, the work, the everything. And not just the good stuff. But, you know, recently I was grieving over the loss of my kitty cat. I just offered that because none of it is mine. My body isn't mine. It doesn't belong to me. You know, the house I live in, you know, even though it's my house and I supposedly own it, it's not mine. It's theirs. And I say theirs because ma and pa and two forms, but one, it's one. Money, my money isn't my money. So to offer it is just a way of saying, I don't worry, I remember this isn't mine, this is yours, to them, to ma and pa.
Exactly.
And that is, I just find that a lot more powerful.
Yes, well, that's exactly, if you remember, the story has been told here a number of times about Swami Prabhavananda. This was in either just during or just after World War II. a woman who'd had a fairly low-paying job, one that sustained her, but because of the change in circumstances, change of the world, women had more opportunities. She got a better job. And so she asked the Swami, Swami, now that I'm making this more money, should I have a bank account? And the Swami immediately responded, oh yes, have plenty bank account. Just remember, the money is not yours. It is Sri Ramakrishna's. So always, always, this is the attitude for us to take. And that's what's next in this reading. What a wonderful secret. Offer everything from ever.
Brother
Excuse me.
Shankara,
Yes.
I totally relate to that of offering, but I was thinking, does that mean you really don't feel the pain of losing it?
Well, in the beginning, of course, you feel the pain of losing it, dear, because you're still identifying yourself as the self, as this thing that is losing something. But as St. Catherine of Siena says in the Love Poems from God, she came to a point where she said, if something disappears that I care about, if something disappears, I say to God, what happened? And then 100 more appear. This place of abundance I have found. It does work, Nira. It just requires practice. And Robert was so honest and eloquent in saying how long it takes to get to that point where you really recognize that it is not yours. In the physical, embodied person sense, that it belongs to that being within that you are. But this is a slow process. So what a wonderful secret. Offer everything as worship to God.
I mean, and my question was in reference to not only your personal belongings or your, also if you lose a loved one, how do you respond to that at that time?
You grieve. You grieve for your loss. And as Cyndi said, if you want relief, you then offer the grief itself and your sense of loss to the divine. You offer everything. Then something happens. And it's not magic, but it is mysterious. It's because your self-identification changes, Nira. You no longer identify yourself with the mind, body, emotions. You've offered all of that day in and day out. You've offered it all of that you are and that you experience. You've offered it to the divine. Finally, you become convinced of what you're saying. First, you take a stand for it. You say, this is what Sri Krishna says to do. This is what Sri Ramakrishna says to do. So I'll do it, even though I don't understand it or yet believe in it. But as you do that, along with the rest of your spiritual practices, slowly and slowly, as Robert pointed out, your identification, your self-identification changes from the outward being, the jiva, to that which will free you, that which you are, the Atman. And as that happens, and notice that Atman has no gender. Atman has no gender. You identify with that. And as you identify with that, and you say, oh, everything is caused by and everything therefore belongs to that, then your sense of who you are and the world you live in changes. But it's only through long practice and steady practice. You know, it's like I've said so many times, if you want to learn how to play a game, say tennis, if you practice once a week for an hour, or even 2 times a week for an hour, you're not going to get very good very fast. But if you practice every day for a prolonged period of time, how long? Sri Ramakrishna said, I have done the full 24 annas. I ask that you do only 1/16. What is 1/16 of 24? It's 1.5. So if we think of, oh, I'm sorry, I've done the full 16 annas. I ask you to do only 1/16. In any event, I've translated. I've done the full 16 annas. I ask you to do only 1. If we think that Sri Ramakrishna was practicing spirituality 24 hours a day, and one said we think we have to do 1/16 of that, then 1/16 of 24 hours is an hour and a half. So that gives us some prescription, and it can be done in any way. The most effective is in turning away from the world and turning inside through introspection, contemplation, concentration, and the practice of meditation. And there's been lots and lots of talk about why that is. But it's necessary. But slowly and slowly what happens is you find that that hour and a half that you're spending is expanding into the other hours of the day, because what was there during the hour and a half is also in your awareness during the rest of the day. And this is when you begin to give everything a Godward turn.
Brother Shankara.
Yes, Robert.
Could I share something right here? Something you
Please.
just said. Something you just said that triggered the 24-hour thing, and it took me back to an experience of me sitting playing the piano, and I looked out the window and I saw it was daylight, and I went back to the piano and I played, and I looked back at the window and I saw it was dark.
Bah.
And I went back and I played and I played and I played. And I looked back at the window and it was daylight again. So that 24-hour thing is very significant. It's not something that you have to do every day. But if you do it once, then you will know what 24-hour practice on anything is like. I was just doing the piano, but in each one of our occupations here, there is something that you have a love for.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're able to practice that for 24 hours, after that period is over, that practice in that particular skill will transfer to every skill that you have in your life.
You're absolutely right, Robert. And
I had to disrupt you right there. I didn't mean.
Oh no, it's quite all right. It's quite all right. This is what this is about. It isn't about me. It isn't about what I say. It's us doing this together. And you just did it. You just said, if you devote yourself, and this, of course, is the way of the saints. They give themselves over to practice. Now, we're not all going to be saints. We're not meant all to be saints, not now. Vivekananda says, ultimately, that's your destiny, and you can accelerate it. But the idea is to adjust and adjust and adjust your focus until it's more and more on your practice and less and less and less on the world, until you see the world as your practice. Whatever your passion is in the world, as you said, Robert, all of us has something. But this happens, and this is what I'm going to talk about tomorrow morning. The mind is wonderfully plastic. There's a word in medicine called neuroplasticity. And tomorrow morning's topic is the importance of satyagraha, the importance of insistence on the truth. And what will be explained is why insistence on the truth slowly transforms your nervous system, which is exactly what Patanjali says, of course. It's amazing how much Jill Bolte Taylor from her own discoveries and Patanjali agree with one another. It really is. There's a song that was sung by 5th and 6th graders at some school on neuroplasticity. I posted it on my Facebook page. There'll be a link to it along with the talk when the talk is posted on the website. It's just splendid about these 5th and 6th graders just coming into their wider world, understanding, oh my God, I can be whatever I want to be. I don't have to be trapped anywhere. And I said in my introduction to the thing, I think I heard Patanjali and Swami Vivekananda laughing out loud and giving each other a high five the first time they heard this song. It's and it doesn't matter if you're 1 year old or 10 years old or 25 years old or 79 years old. Your mind is still plastic. Your mind is still rearranging and producing new patterns according to what it is that you hold in your awareness. As the yogis say, where your attention goes, your prana goes. Your prana is your life force. So anyway, I'm just beginning to talk tomorrow morning. So anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara?
Yes, dear.
When Cyndi was mentioning, you offer the good and the not so good, it just reminded me of the term. I think I mentioned here before that one of the Swamis called it sandwich sadhana. So you get up in the morning and start with a generic offering, I offer everything, and that might be your layer of bread. Then as you go through the day, then you keep adding layers. Some of it might be lettuce, some sweet pickles, maybe some jalapeno. Then you can put another layer of bread and then offer the sides. So that's what it sort of reminded me, that you offer, everything. You're
Yes,
just layering it. And he called
yes.
it Santi Sadhana.
And slowly and slowly you get in the habit, as you said, of offering each of those ingredients during the day: the lettuce, the pickles, the jalapeno. If you have a spicy moment, a painful moment, you offer that too. Cyndi mentioned offering the grief that she felt over the loss of her lovely little cat Sita. And by the way, that was a remarkably lovely little cat. Um, so yes, and this is, we'll take this up again next week. The path of action. Tomorrow morning we'll talk about the path of jnana and talk about it in the sense of what happens when you insist on the truth, which in the Advaita path is called nididhyasana. Anything else from anyone before we wind it up?
Shankara ji,
Yes, Balakrishna,
I have a question.
please.
See, every time we do this offering, we chant Brahmarpanam, Brahmahavir and all these things. But here, so there it says, when you do this, whatever it is, either this Homa is Brahman, the offering is Brahman, the person who is offering is Brahman, and the ladle is Brahman and everything. But here, Swami says, all is not, God is. How do we understand that?
Balakrishna, if you remember, I talked at one time about a teacher named Don Juan Matus. And his apprentice, Carlos Castaneda, kept trying to pin him down about exact this, exact that. And Don Juan finally lost his temper a little bit one day and said, Carlos, I've been telling you again and again, this is only a way of talking about it. You cannot say it specifically in words, just as it says in the Chandi, thou art that which cannot be uttered specifically. So there seem to be these contradictions. Okay. The thing for us to work on, Balakrishna, is that which appeals to us most. We cannot try to resolve all the contradictions in our left mind. It simply will not work in a linear sense. The finite cannot comprehend the infinite. So we just have to work that system, that methodology that most appeals to us and get the results. And what Sri Ramakrishna says is that you will get the results. And when you draw close to God, all of these paradoxes, contradictions, and questions will resolve themselves. That's the best answer I can give, Balakrishna. The fact is that both are true, but how it's so cannot be explained. It's from where you're looking at it. God alone is real, the world is illusory. Sri Ramakrishna says this, and at the same time he says, this is all the glory and splendor of the Divine Mother. This is her play. And then he'll say, yes, but you can say Mother herself is a dream. But we're living in the dream. When people would try to tell him that they believed it wasn't true, sometimes he would give them a pinch. And when they said, ouch, because he gave them a sharp pinch, he would say, I thought you just told me that this wasn't real. So Walt Whitman, the great poet and
Can I share something? Oh,
please go right ahead, Robert.
Can I share something on that same subject before you left?
Please.
I think that we simply refuse to accept or acknowledge or believe that we are not the body.
Yes.
This body is ignorant. And the Atman, the self, the true self, cannot know what it knows in this body. And we have to accept the fact that we are ignorant in this body. And an ignorant person, it's normal for them to not understand complex conditions and situations. So that's a normal position to be. To have a question like the brother just had is a normal situation.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to accept and keep meditating, keep learning, keep advancing. And one day, you will, I will, we all will understand.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
And in the meantime, if we remember that great Jewish teacher and saint and mystic, Baal Shem Tov, he said, the recognition that I am common and unlearned is the achievement of a lifetime. Humility. Humility before the mystery. And somehow then, in that humility and the gratitude that goes with it, something awakens. But it's not, as Robert pointed out, the knowledge of the body and the mind. It is the knowledge of the Atman that cannot be uttered specifically. So that's a long, circuitous answer, Balakrishna. Anything else?
Brother Shankara?
Let Balakrishna say.
No. I'm happy, but at least, I know. Just wondering if there is any, further explanation. That's what I was more,
Well,
that's why actually,
the best I can offer.
Yes.
And it's very good indeed. It's not from me, but the best that I can offer is start reading the gospel at page 132. Start reading the gospel at page 132 and read until you're satisfied. And it's not many pages, maybe 10, 12, something like that. The master does his best to explain to these very good devotees, these selected few that were invited by Keshab Sen to go on a steamer trip on the Ganges with the master. And the master explains to the best of his ability. And he addresses these contradictions as best he can. And he says, it's the mother herself speaking, Kali herself speaking through him. He asks Mother, what shall I tell them? What can I say to them? And then he goes into samadhi. And then when he comes out, he starts speaking. And it's clear that she has answered his prayer. Did you have something, Haima?
Oh, Brother Shankara, when you said awakening, I just wanted to make a comment. The awakening happens only in silence, I realized. And that's when the neuroplasticity steps in. Our neurons get rewired to that awakening experience. That's all I wanted to comment.
Apparently, that's when it is at its most profound.
Yes.
But according to the neuroscientists, our brain is making 1.8 million new connections per second. Per second. Now, if you think that the body is made of 50 trillion cells, 1.8 million is not that surprising a number. That there's still that number of connections going on between those cells that are part of the neurological systems. But nevertheless, that's a lot of new connections per minute.
We can
So
make,
when you do as Robert Ayers said,
yes.
when you practice continuously for 24 hours, that's a lot of seconds for the for 1.8 million changes to be going on. And those 1.8 million changes direct some changes in the DNA. Things are switched on, things are switched off. Messenger RNA, DNA, all this. Oh, the complexity is beyond imagination and awesome. But it happens. And it happens because of practice. In the calmness and in the quiet, yes, no or fewer distractions so that the purity emerges more spontaneously and easily. Anything else, you beautiful people?
Then we can see the world with clarity. That's what happens. We see the world with
Yes.
that illumined soul. We'll see the clarity. Thank you.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything else? All right. Dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, "Come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this your jungle world. Om, Amen. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Any final thoughts from anyone? All right, dears. Away we go. Until tomorrow morning. I'll probably remember tomorrow morning to be on time.
Thank you,
Somehow or another, I
Shankara.
was thinking, I don't know why, but I'd gotten in my mind this was Friday. How that happened?
Well, it was serendipitous or whatever it was that when I logged in, I was logged in as you from downloading the Zoom videos.
Good.
Got to log out, so I didn't know until I logged in that I had started the meeting, which
Yay!
I'm not the doer.
No, indeed.
The same thing happened to me Thursday. Even though I remember, okay, the meeting is Thursday, but I thought, oh, somehow I misplaced the Thursday to Friday. Oh, it's tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly.
So
It happens with these older minds, these older left minds. They're not as sequential as they used to be. Well, good afternoon, everyone. May you have a sweet the rest of your day. In Mother's hands, we will put you in her loving and protective embrace. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga Durga Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind. Until tomorrow. Jai Shri.
Thank you, Shankaraji.
Jai. Jai.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Wonderful contributions from everyone.